Hello everyone, it's Rebecca and welcome to my 2022 book recap, year-end wrap-up, and Happy New Year. I'm recording this on New Year's Eve, the very last day of the year. I will be doing a tier list, as you can see. I enjoy watching people rank anything. I think it's really fun and it's an interesting exercise in reviewing and evaluating what I've read. And then also, just because I didn't start my channel till second half of the year, this is a good way for me to go back through things that I've read and do wrap up, and then just kind of, see if I can definitively rank these books, which is feeling more and more daunting now that I'm actually recording this. So that's fun. But yeah, I'm excited to do this. We'll jump into it. I want to go over a couple of stats first, just kind of overview of what I read, and then I will go through and rank these books. I've ordered them from the first book I read to the last, so just from beginning to end. Just that seems the best way to format it. So first of all, when it comes to stats, I made a goal to read 30 books in 2022, and I ended up reading 39. So I'm very happy with that. I will likely increase my goal for 2023. I'm thinking maybe I'll try to read 48 books. It's like a solid 4 book per month. We'll see. Of the 39 books I read, 30 of them I read in print and 9 of them I read on audio. 2 of the books that I read were rereads, and I'll point those out as I go through my ranking. Otherwise, the rest of the books I read them for the first time. I read 7 nonfiction, 30 fiction, and 2 books of poetry, which is that makes sense. That breakdown makes sense. I typically read more fiction than nonfiction, and I don't read a lot of poetry. So let's just jump into it. I made categories. My top tier will be perfection. I call it perfection tier. That would just be books that hit every little thing that I love in a story, in a book, and I just immediately gave it 5 out of 5 stars after reading it. Next tier down, I'm labeling 9 out of 10 would recommend, and that's just because it's there's books that I know I read that maybe aren't perfection tier, but they're so good, and I'm still recommending them to everyone, and I think they're just, high tier, very, very good. Mid tier, I'm calling solid, and that's just real good, no complaints, but didn't blow me away. Then below solid, I have the tier I can appreciate, and that's just books that maybe didn't work for me, but I really, can see the merit, and I can see why they might be loved or really well appreciated. So just not quite hitting it for me. And end of the tier, or bottom of the tier, not for me, and pretty self-explanatory. Just no thanks, not gonna work for me. So there's that. Let's get going. Like I said, I'll be going from beginning of the year to the end of the year. And the first book I read in 2022 was Crying in Mart. This book is immediately going into perfection tier. It was so good. It hit all the right spots for me. It's a lovely just depiction of mother-daughter relationship and food descriptions were so incredible. Michelle Zauner wrote with such like honesty, and portrayed some hard things, and was just super open and honest about her relationships, but yet gave everyone that she wrote about, especially her mother, such dignity, and I just thought it was a perfect memoir. Next, I read Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and I'm trying to think. I'm throwing her in solid for the moment. I feel like I'm going to put her in I can appreciate, but I think here's what I think. It was a good book. It was one that I've seen movie adaptations. I think I read like a kid's like abridged or like adaptation of it. Is like younger, so I know the story, I know the plot, I know its influence, and so I was like, I need to read this. I've read Wuthering Heights, like I gotta read this classic, right? And it really slogged for me, and I really liked the character of Jane Eyre. I really liked her a lot, and I can see like, the like very, very, very early like nods to feminism, and like I know she was like a big influence on feminist writing, and like was provocative for that time, I'm guessing, but I don't know. I didn't love the male characters, and it just like, I don't know. It wasn't perfect. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to leave it here. I can move it later if I need to. Okay. The Memory Police. Also going in a perfection tier. Oh, man. It's probably hard because this Jane Eyre was sandwiched between Crying in H Mart and Memory Police, which were just so standout for me. So, I don't know. Sorry, girl. I think that might be part of it. But anyway, Memory Police was so good. So good. Just a really good, like, speculative yet literary fiction novel. It's just incredible. It makes you think. I've been thinking about it all year round, like all year long since I've read it. Character is on this island in Japan, and all of these and memories are disappearing. So people's memory of what perfume is, or what like a boat is, disappears. There's only a select few people that for some reason can still remember these things. So I can't even explain it. The concept, or what we identify as like a boat, like that no longer exists. Your concept of a boat no longer exists. But there are some other people that remember it, and the government of this island does not want any people to have their memories still. Our main character helps to harbor somebody who is hiding out from the memory police. It's weird and cool. The main character is writing a novel at the same time, and so there's like that book within a book. Anyway, messes with your brain. Super cool. Amazing. Love Yoko Ogawa. Incredible. Okay. Next, I read Aphasia by Mauro, Javier, Cardenas. And I picked this book up because I loved the cover. I thought it was like super just gorgeous. I loved the look of it. And I read the first few pages, and it was intriguing. A man's kind of stream of consciousness, and it's weird and hard to just put down and pick up because there weren't a lot of chapter breaks or paragraph breaks. It's very stream of consciousness. At first I thought it was a little pretentious. There's a lot of music and artist references, so if you don't know them, I think that it can be a little bit alienating, but I also felt like it encouraged me to explore some things that I didn't know about, and so then I'd go look them up. And the title Aphasia means like not being able to communicate. I'm gonna like look it up really quick so I'm saying it correctly. Loss of ability to understand or express speech caused by brain damage. It was really good. I'm glad I read it. I feel like smarter for reading it, but also it was hard to read. Like not smart enough to read it or to explain it, evidently. So let's go on. Saigon, I read this. This is another memoir. And I did this on audio. My dad had read it and he really enjoyed it and recommended it to me. This one I think is a solid read. I'm going to keep it in mid-tier. It was good. Again, crying in Mart just is perfect, and this one didn't hit as hard for me. A little bit corny for me, like the sense of humor and the formatting, but I think if you like a good coming of age memoir, Asian American experience, this one's really, really lovely. Again, solid. All right, then I read Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie, and I read this for a little book club that I do with my sisters. We do one book a quarter, and because there's 4 of us, and we take turns selecting a book. My sister chose this one because she was in her Agatha Christie era, as she said, and I hadn't read it before. It was really fun. I think it fits well in solid. I'm going to keep it here because I think it is a quintessential murder mystery. I like the setting of it being on a train. It's fun, cast of characters, has old-timey problematic features, but other than that, it's just a fun murder mystery. Then I read What Happened to You. This is by a doctor, like a psychologist, psychiatrist or something, Bruce Perry, but it's like a conversation with Oprah Winfrey. I did this on audio at a recommendation. A therapist had recommended it to me like a year ago or so I gave it a try. It was good. I think I really liked it at the time. Maybe would have worked. Maybe this could have worked better for me in a podcast or something like that. It's very anecdotal because it's just stories of people with trauma and that this Dr. Perry had interacted with and what he did. But other than that, I think the main premise is smart, which is just trying to reframe what the wording, what's wrong with you, to what happened to you. It's more of an acknowledgement that people are the way they are because of traumatic events, and we carry that with us, and how we move forward in our life is really hinges on what happened to us. And so I think it's overall really good, but doesn't stick with me as much as I thought it would. Then I read We Run the Tides by Vendela Vida. This I read in my local book club that I go to. It takes place in San Francisco, which was fun to read with my book club because I live in San Francisco. I think it takes place in the 60s, and it has that coming of age, 2 girls' friendships, and coming up in the 60s and them exploring their identities, their friendship, and there's a bit of a mystery to it. I'd say there's a little bit. Now, I also read My Brilliant Friend, the first book in the Ferrante quartet. I think it's a quartet. And I would say that this feels a bit like a modern conversation piece with Ferrante. So if you like that, you might like We Run the Tides. I feel like this also feels right in here. I may have liked it. I actually found it really charming. I'm going to put it here. Yeah, I'm going to put it there. That feels good. Okay, we'll see. Then I read Detransition Baby by Torrey Peters. I'm going to put this here. Yeah. 9 out of 10, would recommend this book. I think it was great. It was not quite perfect for me. But also it's just a romp. It's just super fun. And so I think I will absolutely read more Torrey Peters. It's a great debut novel. She's incredible. It's chaotic and fun and a great time. Time is a Mother by Ocean Vuong is what I read next. This is a book of poetry. I picked this up because I had loved Ocean Vuong's book On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. He's just such an incredible writer, and I loved On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. Again, I don't read a lot of poetry, so I'm gonna say keep it in this mid-tier, solid tier. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I don't read a lot of poetry, so maybe if I had more like of a understanding, I don't know. I don't have a lot to compare it to, but I thought it was enjoyable. It hasn't stuck with me like crazy, but I enjoyed reading it at the time. I read Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, and I really enjoyed this book. This one, the first few lines or the first chapter or so just really blew my mind. I had a hard time describing it. Incredible book. Just I've never had mental illness or identity struggle with identity described so well than I had seen in this book. I'm going to keep it here in 9 out of 10. Part of me wants to put it in perfection. I feel like I want to just a little bit more out of this. It's one of those where I think I'm going to want to read anything Emezi writes. I'm like, this is an incredible jumping off point, and it just is encouraging me to read anything else from Emezi. It's so good. Set Boundaries, Find Peace is what I read next. This is a nonfiction book that I read on audio, and I liked this more than What Happened to You. It's a good book about people like me who struggle with setting boundaries with others and with themselves, and I should probably read it again this year. It was pretty good, actually. This is a good one for me. I'm going to put it up here. Yeah. That was really good. Okay. Then I read The Plot, and this book I read for book club again. It is, I'm going to put it in not for me, actually. I wouldn't have picked this up on my own, and I didn't really care for it. It's a book about an incredible plot in a book, basically. And it's thrillery. I just thought it was too cheesy and not self-aware enough. It's about a book about an author who tries to capitalize on what he thinks is the best plot he's ever had, and there is an ensuing mystery and scandal behind it, and I don't know, just really not for me. This isn't, I've enjoyed thrillers in the past. This just is like not the type of book that I like. And I was not surprised by this, and it didn't subvert anything for me. So it sits there. Then I read Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. This was great. I did this on audio. I also listened to Sounds Like a Cult, the podcast that is kind of, I believe, a spinoff from her research from writing this book, and I like all of it. The book, the podcast, it's great. Or it's cool to learn about the fanatic language, how it's used in different types of organizations, in branding, marketing, anything to get people to feel like they belong. It was really fascinating, and I thought it was well done. I'm going to put it up here. I really enjoyed it. Maggie O'Farrell's Hamnet is what I read next, and I really, really loved this book. I'm going to put this up here. Do some rearranging. I think Freshwater. Freshwater's coming at the top of this. Then Detransition, maybe Hamnet. I really loved Hamnet. Oh, I really loved Hamnet. It was so good, and I keep recommending it to people who love historical fiction and just who love a really good family story. This is just an excellent motherhood family story, and I thought it was a genius take on Shakespeare's family. Super cool. Then I read Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I read this again for book club, and I had read Station 11 before, really enjoyed, but I think I enjoyed that more. I really, really liked Station 11. This one didn't quite hit as hard for me, but I loved the elements of time travel and this kind of very... Mandel writes with a really, she writes like sci-fi or dystopian, but in a very accessible way. So it's a very, easy to read. And I think everyone genuinely enjoyed it in my book club, but it didn't, blow me away. And I feel like it was just fine. It was just fine. We'll put it here. I think it's good, top of solid. It was good, but not great. Then I read Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I really loved this one. This was my choice for my sister's book club, and we all really enjoyed it. It was great. I think it's up here. It's up here, if not in perfection. I really loved this book. It's making me want to read another Susanna Clark book. I have the Norrell, Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell now, ready to read, because I really loved this. I thought it was sweet. I thought it was enough, thought-provoking, but really accessible and enjoyable. And I think a lot of different types of readers would enjoy it. Empire of Pain is what I read next. This is journalistic nonfiction about the Sackler family, who created the opioid epidemic and are just awful, awful, awful. This book was incredibly well researched, really well put together. It really bummed me out. So any points I'm taking away from it, I'm going to put it in solid. I probably would go higher, except for it just really bummed me out so much. It's really sad. If you like Succession, I think you'd like this book, but Succession is more fun because those people aren't real. This is better, I think, than Saigon. I think it's up here. Okay. Then I read Agatha of Little Neon by Claire Luchette, and I loved this book. This one's great. This is coming up here. Oh, this is so hard, you guys, to do tier ranking. Why am I doing this? This is so hard. Let me put her up here for a second. Agatha of Little Neon is a sweet little gem of a book. It's about a sister nun reevaluating her affiliation with the Catholic Church. It's really lovely, incredible. I think it's a debut novel, and it was very, very good. I don't know. I really loved this. I feel like for me, especially, this hits some things that are really meaningful for me, as far as like a religious affiliation and walking away from it, and it having been part of your life for so long. It's incredible, but also just the power of belonging to something and the power of sisterhood and friendship. Incredible. Great. I feel like not enough people have read it. Then I read My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I really enjoyed it. I love a sister or friend, like friendship between girls story, coming of age. I thought the setting was great. The characters were like really well thought out and portrayed. I am more excited to read the next novel than I was reading this, if that makes sense. Like, as soon as it ended, I got like very excited to see what happened next. I think it like sets up really well for the next what's to come. Like in reading this, it made me want to reread Edna O'Brien's The Country Girls trilogy, which is an Irish author's trilogy of two girls growing up in rural Ireland and then finding their way through adulthood. Basically, I read this and I wished I was reading the Country Girls trilogy a little bit more. I'm going to put her up in solid. I enjoyed reading it. I will be reading the rest of the series, but it wasn't like as good as I wanted it to be. After that, I read Lapvona, and I also read this one from my local book club, which was really fun. This was a really fun book to have in a book discussion because so many people had really varying opinions, and the range was really great. My thoughts on this book are I wanted to like it more because I really enjoyed My Rest and Relaxation, which I read last year or the year before. And I think Moshfegh is a really talented and incredible writer. And I've been trying to figure out why this one didn't work for me as well as I wanted it to. I'm okay. Like, I'm happy to read books with, like, unlikable or unlikable characters or amoral kind of gray area like storylines, but this one I just don't think it had enough levity for me, and it was really gross. And I think I really struggled with like some of the descriptions, and just like how icky it made me feel. I'm gonna keep it here. I'll probably put it at top of here. I think it's probably more of it's not the book, it's me. I just think I really struggled with it, but I can see her skill and the humor that was in the book. There were so many like interesting, humorous parts. The visuals were great, but I couldn't get past a few things in here for me, and I think it's because I'm just like a little squeamish. But I also love the cover. The cover is amazing, stunning. Then I read Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I actually took a long time to read this. I started it earlier in the year and finally finished it. I don't read a lot of fantasy, and I know this is a heavy hitter in the fantasy genre, and a lot of people love it. So I was like kind of excited. I was trying to branch out a little bit more into sci-fi and fantasy, dip my toes a bit this year. And this one just, it started out well for me. I thought like it had a good start and I liked the ending, but it just really slogged in the end. I wasn't convinced by the politics. It felt very like, I don't know, just very shallow. The characterization, and I'm not sure if this is like built, like if it's marketed as YA. I'm not gonna give up on fantasy. I just don't think this one worked. Maybe it was too formulaic for me or something. But I know people love it, so I don't know. Just not for me. Then I read The Only Good Indians, and this was the third book I read in my sister's book club. I have a sister who loves horror books, and she recommended this one. Stephen Graham Jones was really good at writing good visuals, like dark horror visuals, but the dialogue was really like stark and jolty. And didn't work for me. I feel like I'm putting this maybe here, but it could also go into solid because I think it's a good horror book. It's like a solid horror, but the language didn't quite work for me. No, I think I'm going to put it here. Okay. Parable of the Talents. This is what I read next. This is Octavia Butler's second book in her Parable series. I read Parable of the Sower, which is the first book in the series. I read it last summer and loved it. This one I'm going to put in 9 out of 10. It's not... I would have put Parable of the Sower, the first book, in perfection. That book was perfect for me. It's dystopian, world-ending, girl going out on her own to try to build a new community, and I loved it. So like prescient and incredible, like almost prophetic. She's just such a smart, brilliant writer. I want to read more Butler. She's just incredible. Parable of the Talents was very good, but not quite as hard-hitting as Parable of the Sower, but I did enjoy it. Still really, really incredible. I love Octavia Butler. I'm going to put her there. Okay. After that, I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and this is my first reread of the year. She goes to the top of the perfection list because she is perfect, and I love this novel. Shirley Jackson is incredible and insanely talented. This book, I don't need to say anything. Just read it. It's so good. You don't need to know anything. Just read it. You shouldn't know anything before reading it for your first time. It's fun to reread and like pick apart over a series of time. This is my third time rereading it. It's just awesome. I love it. Then I read The Bloody Chamber, short stories by Angela Carter. I read this for my spooky season reads, and I really liked it. I'm gonna put it in solid. I think it goes at the top of solid. It is great, spooky, vibey, spooky season short stories. Cool takes on fairy tales, very vibey, very like atmospheric. Great. I then read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein for my spooky season reads, and also really great, solid classic and a great introduction into what would become sci-fi. I think this is a great classic. I definitely liked it better than Jane Eyre. I think it goes up here. Just solid. Shirley Jackson's The Sundial is what I read next, and I loved this book. This one, it might go in perfection or it might go... I really like this. Let's put it up here. This one, just like, is another incredible Shirley Jackson novel. I think this one is probably less well known. I hadn't known about it until I saw it at the bookstore, and it just was delightful and weird, and you can hear me like talk about it more in my spooky season reading video, but know that I really loved it, and it was my favorite of the spooky season books I read. I then read In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, and this immediately goes into perfection. I'll put it here, I think. It's just like, this one was so incredible. Carmen Maria Machado, like, I'm sad I haven't read her until now, so I'll be reading more of her. Another memoir, but really subverts the genre, and I thought it was incredibly smart. It's brilliant. Then I read Dune. I did Dune on audio. Here's my sci-fi heavy hitter for the year. Took me a bit to read it. I had seen the movie and really enjoyed, or the new movie. I saw that and I really, really enjoyed it. And so I wanted to see what the book experience, the reading experience was like, and I thought it was cool. I don't know if it was helpful that I had seen the movie. And so I had a little bit like solid ground almost for reading the book. I'd kind of in my brain had like, had an atmosphere and an aesthetic built in because of seeing the movie. This was good sci-fi. I thought the politics were convincing, the world building was well done, and the biggest issues I had with it were I thought that Herbert was really contradictory with what he was trying to do with the women characters in the book. It felt very contradictory is the best I can say for it. It's just like, well, do you want them to be submissive or powerful? I don't know what you want here. So I don't know. I think that's where it loses the most. Then I read A Visit from the Goon Squad. I read this for my book club. I thought it was really cool, and I liked the format. It felt almost like short stories. Although I think it's marketed as a novel. It's just like a lot of different voices. Each chapter has a different character, but they're somehow all tied together. I thought it worked for me. I like the switching of perspectives. There's one chapter near the end that it's done as a PowerPoint, which actually worked for me. So I don't know. I would recommend reading it in print rather than over audio, because I don't think that the PowerPoint comes across in audio very well. But not, as with most short stories, not every section works for me, so it can't be perfect. It was very good, and I would probably put it up here high in this tier. Yeah. Maybe here. It was good. I enjoyed it. And I think her newest book, The Candy House, is the follow-up to this, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not sure if will read it yet. I feel like there's so many other books I want to read that I'm not going to prioritize The Candy House. But I think Jennifer Egan is an interesting writer. And then I read this book of poetry called The Octopus Museum, by Brenda Shaughnessy, and I really liked this, actually. I enjoyed this more than Time as a Mother. It's left me thinking a bit more. I'm going to put it here. I don't know exactly what to do with poetry sometimes once I've read it, how to experience it very well. So I'll keep it in this tier. but I did like it more than Time as a Mother. But I think there's just some elements that resonated with me more, and it just made me think about how I interact with objects and the simple things I take for granted. Then I read The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. I think if you saw my library vlog, I picked this one up as well as The Octopus Museum. I got this one because I had loved The Memory Police so much, and I am also going to put this in perfection. This was so good. This one hit like cozy, intimate, human connection story for me. All the right things. It was really lovely, and I highly recommend just picking up Ogawa. This one's more unsettling and surreal and weird, The Memory Police, whereas Housekeeper is more quiet and also about memory, but not as eerie. After that, I read Too Much Happiness by Alice Munro, and this is a collection of short stories. This was very, very good. I loved her writing. I want to read more. I really enjoyed this. Again, short stories, not all of them were perfect for me, but this goes in high 9 out of 10 tier. Oh, man. I think it goes here, actually. Because she's a really smart writer. I'm going to read more Munro, absolutely. She just writes with so much depth and so much care, and I think really immaculate writing. Sorry, I'm getting tired. We need to wrap this up. So let's quickly go through these last books. I read Motherhood by Sheila Heti for book club, and I was really impressed with Heti's writing. There was like several quotes from here that I really loved, and I wrote down because I thought that she was just very smart, interesting philosophies. But this one, I thought, this book in particular, was a little bit limiting, I think, for a book that spent so much time meditating on this subject. There could have been a broader range of like dialogue about motherhood amongst different types of people that would consider motherhood. I felt it was a little bit limited. However, I loved the writing, and I would pick up another Sheila Heti. I know she's been getting a lot of love for the Pure Color book, and I'm intrigued enough that I will definitely read something else. I just think this one didn't quite hit it for me. But again, just all really good writing and intrigued. And then I was in the mood for something more plot heavy and more like, I don't know, more fun. So I read In the Woods by Tana French, which is a detective mystery book by an Irish author. It takes place around Dublin. And this one was really fun. I'm going to put it in solid, I think. I enjoyed reading it. This hit the spot for what I was like looking for. It's not perfect. The characters lean a little stereotypical at times, but it feels like watching a BBC murder show. So I'm going to put it in. I'm going to put it here. It fits well. Actually, I'm going to put it here. It was fun. It was a fun read, and it hit the spot for what I was looking for. Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. I read this Philip K. Dick book because I finally wanted to get to the source material for Blade Runner. I love the movie Blade Runner and the follow-up Blade Runner 2049. I really like the cyberpunk genre, and I thought it was time to finally read the book. I saw the movies first, then read the book, and I don't know, if that influenced how I felt about the book, because I do have such a love for Blade Runner, the film. So I didn't love this book more than the movie at all, but I do enjoy them both for, like, I enjoy this for different reasons. And there's enough differences that they can kind of stand alone. But I enjoyed it. It was definitely thought-provoking, and you can totally see how it inspired kind of the cyberpunk and subsequent sci-fi genres. Incredibly influential for good reason. Interesting philosophical thoughts about what it means to be human, and I thought it was timely that I read it the same year I read Frankenstein, because I think they both have so many interesting themes in common. So, Solid is my favorite of, like, I'd say, of my sci-fi genre books, which I'd classify Dune, and I'd also say Sea of Tranquility also fits in there. I do think this one is probably not is not near as accessible. Sea of Tranquility was the most accessible of the three. This one more heady and weird and a little trippy at times, but I think it's the better of the three. And I think it'll fit solidly in the solid tier. I didn't absolutely love it, but I think it was great, and I'm glad I read it. After that, I read Night by Edna O'Brien. As I said earlier, I had read O'Brien's Country Girls trilogy, and after reading Bronte, was in the mood for O'Brien, so I ended up picking up Night, which is a slim little novel. And this is just, like, this book left me dizzy. It was fun and witty and smart and sharp, and the language was insane. I read, like, some people have said she sounds like Joyce in this book, or writes like Joyce in this book. I've not read James Joyce, so I can't say for sure, but I can say the language packs a punch. It is rhythmic, poetic, lyrical, and spins you around and spits you back out. It's great. Incredible book. It's coming up in 9 out of 10. I highly recommend O'Brien. I think she is underrated, and not enough people have read her. Incredible Irish author. And then finally, I wrapped up the year by reading A Christmas Carol, which my youngest sister selected for our final book club pick this year. And I did it on audio with it's Jim Dale does the narration. I think he did the Harry Potter books as well, which is nostalgic for me because I listened to a lot of the audiobooks of Harry Potter growing up. This is my other reread. I read this Dickens book in, like, junior high, I think. And so this is my second time reading it, and it was delightful on audio. A weird, ghostly, gothic Christmas story. So I think that I really had so much fun with it. It's coming up here. I think this feels good as I'm looking back over my tier list. I don't know. We gotta lock it in, throw it into the internet, and leave it there, and then I'll never rewatch this again. So there you have it. I hope everyone had a great reading year, and they're looking forward to 2023. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.